A black woman in a perfect business suit is being physically escorted out of first class while her expensive presentation materials scatter across the airplane aisle like worthless trash. Other passengers have their phones out, recording what they think is just another scene of someone being removed from a flight they don't belong on. The gate manager stands there with his arms crossed, confident in his authority, and says loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ma'am, there's been a mistake with your ticket." The woman doesn't yell, she doesn't cry, she doesn't beg. Instead, she looks him dead in the eye with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes and says something that makes his face go pale. "You made a mistake here that you're all about to regret." What this gate manager, these flight attendants, and every single person recording on their phones doesn't know is that in exactly 48 hours, this woman is going to walk back into this airline's headquarters and buy the entire company. Every single person who humiliated her, who assumed she didn't belong, who treated her like a criminal for sitting in a seat she paid nearly $2,000 for, is about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 48 hours to show you exactly how we got here. Because this story is about so much more than just revenge. This is about dignity, legacy, and what happens when people push the wrong person too far. Meet Marissa Bennett. At 42 years old, she's the kind of woman who commands attention the moment she enters a room, not because she demands it, but because her presence simply can't be ignored. In her hotel suite, she's meticulously preparing for what could be the most important investor meeting of her career. Her tailored navy suit hangs on the closet door, her presentation printed and bound, every detail accounted for. Marissa is the founder and CEO of Bennett Tech Solutions, a company that pioneered artificial intelligence logistics software that revolutionized how airlines manage their operations. If you've flown on a major carrier in the last 5 years, there's a good chance Marissa's technology helped get that plane off the ground on time. But here's the thing about Marissa. Despite her success, she's remained intentionally low profile. No magazine covers, no spotlight. She lets her work do the talking. As she reviews her presentation one more time, her laptop chimes with an incoming video call. It's her teenage daughter, Maya, calling from home. The smile that spreads across Marissa's face is instant and genuine. "Hey baby, shouldn't you be asleep?" Maya's voice comes through, tired but agitated. She tells her mother about an incident at school that day. A teacher assumed Maya was in the wrong classroom, questioned whether she really belonged in the advanced placement course, suggested she might be more comfortable in the standard track. Marissa's jaw tightens, but her voice remains steady. She tells Maya something her own father once told her. "Let your work speak, not your anger. They're expecting you to react with emotion. Show them excellence instead." It's a philosophy Marissa has lived by her entire life, even when everything in her wanted to scream at the injustice of it all. After hanging up with Maya, Marissa finds herself staring at the Seattle skyline through her hotel window. Her mind drifts back, the way it often does when she thinks about her daughter facing the same battles she once fought. She remembers being a little girl, no more than 7 or 8, sitting on the hood of her father's old Buick, at the edge of the airport employee parking lot. Her father, Charles Bennett, would take her there on his breaks when her mother was working late. They'd watch the planes take off, climbing into the sky like metal birds defying gravity itself. "One day, baby girl," he'd tell her, his voice full of hope and dreams, "you're going to fly so high they'll have to look up to see you." Charles Bennett worked for Skyward Airlines as a baggage handler for 30 years. 30 years of early mornings and late nights, of lifting heavy bags and dealing with impatient passengers. He wore that uniform with pride, believing he was part of something bigger, something that connected people across the world. Young Marissa would trace the Skyward logo on his shirt with her small fingers, thinking it was the most important job in the world because her daddy did it. Now, sitting in this hotel room, Marissa makes a decision. For tomorrow's flight to Seattle, she's going to fly Skyward Airlines. The same airline her father dedicated 3 decades of his life to. She pulls out her laptop and books a first-class ticket. Seat 2A. She pays the full price, $1,847. No miles, no upgrades, no complications. Just a straightforward transaction for a seat she's more than earned the right to sit in. The next morning, Marissa arrives at the airport with time to spare. She's wearing a crisp white blouse under a charcoal blazer, her carry-on bag rolling smoothly beside her. Inside that bag is her prototype presentation, the pitch that could secure $500 million in investment capital. Everything needs to go perfectly. At the check-in counter, a young woman named Jessica greets her with a practiced smile. "Good morning, checking in for Seattle?" Marissa hands over her ID and pulls up her confirmation on her phone. She watches as Jessica scans her identification, and then something shifts. The clerk's smile falters, just slightly. Jessica's eyes move from the ID to Marissa's face, then back to the ID again, as if she's trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't quite make sense to her. "One moment, please," Jessica says, her voice now lacking the warmth it held just seconds ago. She picks up the phone at her station, and Marissa notices how Jessica turns her back slightly, lowering her voice. Within a minute, a supervisor appears. Her name tag reads Karen, and she carries herself with the kind of authority that comes from years of finding problems where none exist. Karen takes Marissa's ID and examines it like it might be counterfeit. She holds it up to the light, checking the hologram. She looks at Marissa, then at the ID, then at her computer screen. "This seems irregular," Karen finally says. "When did you book this ticket?" Marissa keeps her voice level, professional. 3 days ago. Is there a problem?" Karen doesn't answer directly. Instead, she makes another phone call, this time walking a few feet away. Marissa can see her whispering into the phone, her eyes darting back to Marissa every few seconds. The businessman behind Marissa in line sighs loudly, checking his watch. A family with small children shifts their weight, the parents exchanging glances. Finally, Karen returns to her station. She prints out a boarding pass with deliberate slowness, examining it one more time before sliding it across the counter. "You're all set?" she says, but then adds with a pointed tone, "For now." Marissa takes the boarding pass, noticing the subtle emphasis Karen placed on those last two words. She proceeds through security without incident, though she can't shake the feeling that something is off. Still, she pushes it aside. She has a meeting to get to, a presentation that could change everything for her company. At the gate, boarding begins right on time. First class is called first, and Marissa walks down the jetway with her carry-on, her presentation bag gripped firmly in her other hand. She finds seat 2A, a window seat with extra legroom and all the amenities that come with first class. She settles in, opens her laptop, and begins reviewing her presentation one last time. The numbers need to be perfect. The pitch needs to be flawless. That's when she notices the flight attendant approaching. His name tag reads Derek, and he's wearing an expression that Marissa has seen too many times in her life. It's a look that says he's already made up his mind about something before gathering all the facts. "Excuse me, ma'am, may I see your boarding pass?" Derek asks. Marissa hands it over without protest, expecting this to be routine. But Derek doesn't just glance at it. He studies it. He turns it over, as if the back might reveal some hidden truth. He checks the seat number against the overhead bin, then looks at the boarding pass again. Then, without a word, he walks away, taking her boarding pass with him. Marissa feels the stares of other first-class passengers beginning to land on her. The woman across the aisle lowers her magazine slightly, watching. The man in front of her turns his head just enough to observe without being obvious about it. Minutes pass. Then Derek returns, but he's not alone. Behind him is a gate manager, a man whose badge identifies him as Robert. Robert is in his 50s, with the kind of posture that suggests he's used to being obeyed without question. "Ma'am, there's been a system error," Robert announces, loud enough that everyone in first class can hear. "This seat is assigned to another passenger." Marissa looks up at him, her expression calm but her mind racing. "I booked this seat 3 days ago. What error?" Robert doesn't miss a beat. "Our records show you have a coach seat, 34B. I'm going to need you to gather your things and move to your assigned seat." The accusation in his tone is unmistakable. He's not suggesting there's been a mistake. He's implying that she's trying to steal a seat that doesn't belong to her. Marissa reaches for her phone, pulling up her confirmation email with fingers that remain remarkably steady despite the anger building in her chest. She turns the screen toward Robert. There it is, clear as day. Seat 2A, first class, $1,847 charged to her credit card 3 days ago. Robert barely glances at her phone before dismissing it. Our system is what matters, ma'am. Please move to coach so we can depart on time. You're holding up the flight. And just like that, Marissa understands. This isn't about a system error. This is about something else entirely. Something she's faced her whole life but never quite gets used to. The other passengers are fully watching now. Some have their phones out, recording. The woman across the aisle whispers something to her companion. A man in a business suit 2 rows up shakes his head as if Marissa is the source of all this disruption. Marissa's voice, when she speaks, is quiet but firm. I'm not moving. I paid for this seat, and this is where I'm sitting. What would you do in this situation? Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. And if you want to see how this story ends, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. And tell me in the comments section, from which city are you watching this story right now? Because you won't want to miss a single moment of what's coming. The line has been drawn, and Marissa Bennett is about to teach everyone on this flight a lesson they'll never forget. Marissa sits there in seat 2A, her confirmation email glowing on her phone screen, $1,847 clearly displayed. Robert, the gate manager, doesn't even pretend to care about the evidence she's showing him. Instead, he does something that makes Marissa's blood run cold. He reaches for the radio clipped to his belt, never breaking eye contact with her, and says into it, I need backup at seat 2A. We have a situation. A situation. That's what Marissa has become. Not a paying customer, not a successful businesswoman, a situation that needs to be handled. Within 30 seconds, 2 more flight attendants appear at the front of the cabin. They walk down the aisle with the kind of urgency usually reserved for actual emergencies. The cabin falls completely silent. Every single person in first class is watching now. This is no longer a quiet confrontation. This is a spectacle, and Marissa is at the center of it. That's when a white male passenger in his 50s, sitting just across the aisle in seat 2C, leans forward. He's wearing an expensive watch and a concerned expression that seems genuine. Excuse me, is there a problem here? He asks, his voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from a lifetime of being listened to. Robert immediately shifts his demeanor. His shoulders relax slightly. His voice loses its edge. No, sir, no problem at all. We're just removing someone from the wrong seat. We'll have this resolved momentarily and get you on your way. The difference in how Robert speaks to this man versus how he spoke to Marissa is like night and day. It's the sound of respect versus suspicion, trust versus accusation. The white passenger nods, satisfied with this explanation, and settles back into his seat. He doesn't question Robert's authority. He doesn't ask to see Marissa's ticket. He simply accepts that the black woman must be in the wrong, and the airline employees must be in the right. And then Marissa watches, her heart sinking into her stomach, as Robert gestures to that same passenger. Actually, sir, there's been a computer error. This is your seat 2A. If you could move over here, we'll get you settled properly. The passenger looks momentarily confused but stands up and moves to Marissa's seat. Her seat. The one she paid for. The one she booked 3 days ago. Just like that. It's given to someone else. Ma'am, I need you to gather your belongings now, Robert says, his voice now loud enough that even passengers in the rows behind can hear. You're holding up this flight, and we have a schedule to keep. Marissa's hands are shaking as she reaches for her laptop, her presentation bag, her carry-on in the overhead bin. One of the flight attendants actually helps the white passenger settle into 2A, adjusting his bag in the overhead compartment, asking if he needs anything. Meanwhile, Marissa is treated like a criminal being processed. Her presentation materials, the ones she spent weeks perfecting, spill out of her bag as she tries to gather everything quickly. Papers scatter across the aisle. A flight attendant picks them up with visible annoyance, shoving them back at Marissa without even trying to keep them organized. And the phones. Dear God, the phones. Marissa can see at least 5 passengers recording her, holding their phones up without any shame, capturing her humiliation for whatever social media platform they'll post it on later. She can already imagine the captions: woman removed from first class, another entitled passenger, she thought she could sit here. That's when she hears the whispers. A woman 2 rows back leans toward her companion, not even bothering to lower her voice much. She probably used miles she didn't have. You know how they try to game the system. The woman's friend nods knowingly. They always try to scam their way into first class. I've seen it 100 times. They always try. As if Marissa represents some monolithic group of scammers, rather than an individual woman who paid nearly $2,000 for a seat she's now being forced out of. Marissa feels the tears threatening. They're building behind her eyes, hot and insistent. But she refuses to let them fall. She will not give these people the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She will not confirm whatever stereotypes they've already decided apply to her. So she blinks hard, takes a breath, and maintains her composure even as everything inside her is screaming. Derek, the flight attendant who started this whole nightmare, takes her carry-on and begins walking toward the back of the plane. "Follow me," he says, not as a polite request, but as an order. And Marissa has no choice but to follow, walking down the aisle of first class while every passenger watches her forced march of shame. They pass through the galley, through the narrow corridor that separates first class from the rest of the plane. They enter the main cabin, and Marissa can feel the energy shift. These passengers look up from their books, their phones, their conversations. They see a black woman being escorted by a flight attendant, and they make their own assumptions about what that means. Row 34. Derek stops at row 34, seat B, the middle seat. Marissa looks at it and feels her heart sink even further. A large man occupies the window seat, his body spilling over the armrest into the middle seat space. On the aisle, a young mother holds a baby who's already fussing, on the verge of a full meltdown. And there, in the middle, is where Marissa is expected to spend the next 3.5 hours. "Here you go," Derek says, gesturing to the seat as if he's doing her a favor. Marissa tries to store her carry-on in the overhead bin, but it's already packed full. Derek has to shove it in, bending her bag at an angle that can't be good for her laptop inside. She slides into the middle seat, and immediately she understands how impossible this is going to be. The man next to her doesn't even acknowledge her presence, doesn't try to make himself smaller to give her space. The mother on the other side apologizes weakly as the baby's crying intensifies. Marissa looks down at the tray table, thinking she can at least pull out her phone and review her presentation notes. But when she tries to lower it, she discovers it's broken. The hinge is cracked, and the table hangs at an awkward angle, completely unusable. She tries to flag down Derek to report the broken equipment, but he's already walking away, heading back to first class where he belongs. So Marissa sits there, compressed between 2 strangers, in a seat she didn't pay for, with no way to prepare for the most important meeting of her career. She pulls out her phone, trying to pull up her presentation slides on the small screen. But between the cramped quarters, the crying baby, and the turbulence as the plane begins to taxi, it's impossible to focus. The words blur on the screen. The numbers don't make sense. Everything she's worked for feels like it's slipping through her fingers. The plane takes off, and Marissa closes her eyes, trying to center herself. But then, she hears it. Laughter. Coming from the first-class galley, just a few rows ahead. The flight attendants are laughing, their voices carrying through the cabin in that way voices do when people think they're being quiet but really aren't. Can you believe she thought she belonged up there? It's Derek's voice, unmistakable. The look on her face when Robert told her to move. A female voice responds, equally amused. "Did you see her trying to show him her phone? Like that matters. Our system is what counts." More laughter. Then Derek again. "They gave her seat to Mr. Morrison. Now that's someone who actually belongs in first class. The man's a senior VP at Boeing. That's the kind of passenger we want up there." The female attendant's voice drops slightly, but Marissa can still hear every word. Unlike some people who think buying a ticket means they deserve to be there, she should be grateful we didn't just remove her from the flight entirely. Marissa's hands grip her phone so tightly, her knuckles turn pale. The rage she's been suppressing threatens to explode out of her. But then she remembers her father's words, the philosophy she's lived by. Let your work speak, not your anger. And suddenly, Marissa realizes exactly how her work is going to speak. She opens her phone and navigates away from her presentation. She pulls up her encrypted messaging app, the one she uses for her other business, the one most people don't know about. Her fingers move across the screen with deliberate precision, typing out a message that will change everything. It's time. Initiate the Skyward acquisition, full board approval by Friday. She hits send and watches the message disappear into the encrypted void. Somewhere, her team is receiving this message. Her CFO, her lawyers, her acquisition specialists, they've been preparing for this possibility for months, ever since Skyward's stock started tanking and the company became vulnerable. Marissa had told them to wait, to be patient, to only move forward if the time was right. Well, the time is right. The time is now. Marissa closes her eyes and leans her head back against the seat. And suddenly she's not in coach on this airplane anymore. She's 8 years old again, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while her father comes through the door. He's wearing his Skyward Airlines uniform, the navy blue slacks and the light blue shirt with the logo over his heart. But he looks exhausted, broken down. His shoulders sag under the weight of a double shift. There are dark circles under his eyes. Young Marissa looks up from her math homework. Daddy, are you okay? Charles Bennett manages a smile for his daughter, even though it clearly takes effort. He kneels down beside her chair, and Marissa can see the wear on his uniform, the fraying at the collar, the stains that won't come out no matter how many times her mother washes it. I'm fine, baby girl, just tired. You know what kept me going today? What, Daddy? Thinking about you. Thinking about how you're going to be so much more than I am. You're going to fly so high, they'll have to look up to see you. He taps her nose gently. You're going to own the sky, baby. Not clean it, not serve it, own it. Marissa opens her eyes, back in the present, back in this cramped middle seat where she doesn't belong. Tears finally escape, running down her cheeks. But these aren't tears of defeat, they're tears of determination, of resolve. Because her father was right. She is going to own the sky. She's going to own the very airline that's humiliating her right now. The flight continues, endless and excruciating. The baby cries for 45 minutes straight. The man next to her falls asleep and begins snoring, his head lolling toward Marissa's shoulder. She shifts away, pressing herself against the crying baby's mother, who gives her an apologetic look but doesn't know what else to do. Marissa's legs cramp from the lack of space. Her back aches from the rigid seat, and every time she hears laughter from the first-class section, it feels like salt in an open wound. Finally, mercifully, the plane begins its descent into Seattle. The captain announces their arrival, thanks everyone for flying Skyward Airlines, and hopes they'll choose them again. Marissa almost laughs at the absurdity of it. Choose them again? After this, the plane lands and taxis to the gate. Marissa checks her watch and her stomach drops. The flight was delayed by 30 minutes due to air traffic, and now she has exactly 22 minutes to get to her investor meeting. 22 minutes to get off this plane, get to ground transportation, and make it to downtown Seattle. She's one of the last people off the plane because she's buried in the middle of row 34. By the time she extracts herself, retrieves her mangled carry-on from the overhead bin, and makes her way up the aisle, first class is long empty. She passes by seat 2A, her seat now vacant and waiting for its next passenger. A passenger who will be treated with respect, with dignity, with the basic human decency that was denied to Marissa. She rushes through the airport, her professional composure cracking as she breaks into a run. Her carefully organized presentation materials are a mess inside her bag, shuffled and bent from the forced removal. She makes it to a taxi, gives the driver the address, and pleads with him to hurry. The taxi weaves through Seattle traffic while Marissa tries desperately to fix her appearance in the tiny mirror of her compact. Her blouse is wrinkled from being compressed in that middle seat for 3 hours. Her hair, which was perfectly styled this morning, now looks disheveled. She has stress sweat stains under her arms. This is not how you show up to a $500 million investor meeting. She arrives at the sleek downtown office building with 3 minutes to spare. No time to find a bathroom and properly freshen up, no time to organize her materials, no time to center herself mentally. She just has to walk in and somehow can convince Portland Capital Group that she's worth $500 million of their investment. The receptionist directs her to the conference room on the 43rd floor. Marissa steps out of the elevator and sees Richard Chen, the lead investor, standing in the hallway. Richard is a legend in venture capital, a man who's made billions by betting on the right companies at the right time. He's also known for being brutally honest and having impossibly high standards. Richard's eyes widen slightly when he sees Marissa. "Miss Bennett?" he says, extending his hand. But she can see the concern in his expression, the way his eyes take in her wrinkled clothes, her frazzled appearance. "Is everything all right? This seems unprepared for you." And there it is, unprepared. The one thing Marissa has never been in her entire professional life. She's built her reputation on being the most prepared person in any room, on anticipating every question, on having backup plans for her backup plans. But today, thanks to Skyward Airlines, she looks like someone who threw herself together at the last minute. Marissa takes a deep breath, calling on every ounce of professionalism she has left. "I apologize, Mr. Chen. I encountered some difficulties on my flight. But I assure you, I'm ready to show you why Bennett Tech Solutions is the investment opportunity of the decade." She follows him into the conference room where 3 other partners from Portland Capital Group are waiting. They all do the same double take when they see her, exchanging glances that Marissa knows all too well. They're reassessing her, questioning whether this disheveled bat woman in front of them is really the tech genius they've heard so much about. Marissa sets down her bag and begins pulling out her presentation materials. But as she feared, they're a disaster. The carefully ordered pages are now mixed up, some bent, some crinkled. She tries to arrange them quickly, but her hands are shaking from the adrenaline and stress of the last few hours. Then comes another blow. She reaches for her laptop to pull up the digital presentation, but when she opens it, she discovers the battery is dead, completely drained. She couldn't charge it during the flight because of that broken tray table, and now she has no way to show them the beautiful slides she's prepared, the data visualizations that make her case so compelling. Richard leans forward, his expression a mixture of concern and confusion. "Miss Bennett, would you like to reschedule? You seem to be having technical difficulties." Reschedule. The word hangs in the air like an indictment. In the venture capital world, if you can't handle a simple presentation, how can you handle a company worth hundreds of millions? If you show up unprepared to a meeting, what does that say about how you'll handle their investment? But Marissa didn't build a tech empire by giving up when things got difficult. She didn't revolutionize airline logistics by backing down from challenges, and she's certainly not going to let Skyward Airlines destroy this opportunity. "No need to reschedule, Mr. Chen," Marissa says, and she's pleased to hear that her voice is steady now, strong. "I apologize, I encountered some difficulties on my flight." She pauses, then makes a decision. She's not going to hide what happened. "I was removed from my first-class seat despite having a valid ticket and confirmation. My presentation materials were scattered and I wasn't able to charge my laptop during the flight. But honestly, that's irrelevant to why we're here." She straightens her shoulders, looks each investor in the eye and continues. "You're not investing in my ability to maintain a perfect appearance or avoid airline discrimination. You're investing in my ability to revolutionize logistics through artificial intelligence. So let me tell you, from memory, exactly why Bennett Tech Solutions is going to transform the industry." And then Marissa does something extraordinary. Without notes, without slides, without any of the carefully prepared materials she spent weeks developing, she delivers her presentation. She recites the market analysis from memory. She explains the technology in terms these investors can understand. She breaks down the revenue projections, the growth trajectory, the competitive advantages. Every number, every statistic, every compelling argument flows from her mind to her voice with perfect clarity. The investors lean in, captivated. Richard starts taking notes, which is something he rarely does. The other partners begin asking questions, and Marissa answers each one with precision and confidence. She talks about user acquisition costs, about scalability, about the 3 major airlines that are already in negotiations to expand their use of her software. For 45 minutes, Marissa Bennett reminds everyone in that room exactly who she is. Not the disheveled woman who walked through the door, but the tech visionary who built something revolutionary. The businesswoman who turned a small startup into an industry leader. The strategist who sees opportunities others miss. When she finishes, there's a moment of silence. Then Richard sets down his pen and looks at her with something that might be respect, might be admiration. Ms. Bennett, that was impressive. The fact that you delivered that entire presentation from memory, under obvious duress, tells me more about your capabilities than any slide deck could. But then his expression shifts slightly, becomes more serious. However, I have to be honest with you. We have concerns about professionalism and preparedness. This meeting, regardless of how you recovered, doesn't reflect the level of polish we expect from our portfolio companies. Marissa's heart sinks. She can hear what he's really saying. It's not enough. Her presentation was great, but the optics were terrible. And in the world of high-stakes venture capital, optics matter almost as much as substance. We'll be in touch, Richard says, and Marissa knows what that means. It means probably not. It means they're going to pass. It means that Skyward Airlines didn't just humiliate her on that flight. They potentially cost her $500 million in investment capital. The investors stand, shake her hand with varying degrees of warmth, and file out of the conference room. Richard lingers for a moment. For what it's worth, Miss Bennett, I hope you file a complaint against that airline. What you described is unacceptable. Then he's gone too, and Marissa is alone in the conference room. Alone with her scattered presentation materials, her dead laptop, her wrinkled clothes, and the crushing weight of what just happened. She sinks into one of the leather conference chairs and finally, lets herself feel everything she's been holding back. The humiliation of being escorted out of first class, the degradation of being forced into a broken middle seat, the rage at hearing those flight attendants mock her, the exhaustion of delivering a presentation while fighting against every obstacle. And underneath it all, the deep, painful knowledge that this kind of discrimination, this kind of casual cruelty, still exists in the world her daughter is growing up in. Marissa pulls out her phone and looks at the message she sent earlier. It's time. Initiate the Skyward acquisition. Full board approval by Friday. And suddenly, she understands with perfect clarity what she needs to do. This isn't just about revenge anymore. This isn't just about teaching some flight attendants and a gate manager a lesson. This is about fundamentally changing a system that allows this kind of treatment to happen in the first place. This is about making sure that no other black woman, no other person of color, no other human being who's different in any way has to experience what she just went through. Skyward Airlines humiliated her. They cost her a crucial investment meeting. They treated her like she was less than human. But what they don't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, is that Marissa Bennett has the power to do more than just complain. She has the power to buy their entire company and burn their discriminatory culture to the ground. Have you ever been humiliated for something that wasn't your fault? Ever had someone treat you like you didn't belong, even when you had every right to be there? Drop your story in the comments, because what Marissa does next is going to make you stand up and cheer. And if you want to see how she takes down this entire airline, you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because the revenge she's about to serve is going to be absolutely legendary. Marissa Bennett is done being the victim. It's time to become the victor. And Skyward Airlines has no idea what's about to hit them. Remember that businesswoman who was humiliated and thrown out of first class? The one who looked defeated walking to that broken middle seat in coach? Well, here's what nobody on that plane knew. While they were laughing at her, while they were recording her humiliation on their great phones, while those flight attendants were mocking her in the galley, Marissa Bennett was typing out a message that would bring an entire airline to its knees. And tonight, in her hotel room in Seattle, the world is about to discover exactly who they messed with. That evening, Marissa sits in her hotel suite, but she's not defeated. She's not broken. She's positioned in front of her laptop with a look of absolute determination. The wrinkled blouse from earlier has been replaced with a crisp white shirt. Her hair is pulled back, her eyes are sharp, focused. This is not the same woman who limped into that investor meeting. This is Marissa Bennett in her true element, about to remind the world exactly who she is. Her laptop screen flickers to life with a video conference. But this isn't a call with friends or family. The screen splits into 6 separate windows, each showing a different member of her executive team. And at the top of the screen, prominently displayed, are 2 words that change everything. Bennett Holdings. Not Bennett Tech Solutions. Bennett Holdings, her private investment firm. The company most people don't know exists because Marissa has deliberately kept it out of the spotlight. Her CFO, James, a sharp-minded strategist who's been with Marissa for 12 years, speaks first. Marissa, we got your message. The team has been working non-stop since you gave the green light. I have to say, when you said it was time, I knew something significant must have happened. Marissa's jaw tightened slightly. Something did happen, James, but we'll get to that. First, show me where we stand. James shares his screen, and suddenly Marissa's video feed is replaced with a detailed portfolio breakdown. Bennett Holdings. And the numbers that appear are staggering. This isn't some small investment firm. This is an empire built quietly, strategically, over 2 decades of brilliant business decisions. The portfolio reveals that Marissa owns significant stakes in 23 major technology companies. Not small percentages either. We're talking about ownership positions substantial enough to influence company direction. She sits on 8 corporate boards, including 2 Fortune 500 companies. Her net worth, conservatively estimated, is somewhere north of $3 billion. $3 billion. With a B. But Marissa didn't build this wealth by being flashy. She built it by being smart, by staying under the radar, by letting everyone underestimate her while she quietly accumulated power. The same way those flight attendants underestimated her. The same way that gate manager Robert underestimated her. The same way every person who's ever looked at her and made assumptions about what she could or couldn't do has underestimated her. James continues, his voice carrying a hint of satisfaction. The Skyward Airlines board approved an emergency session for this Friday. They didn't have much choice. Their stock price has dropped 34% this year, their debt has ballooned, and they're desperate for a lifeline. Marissa leans forward, her fingers steepled under her chin. Tell me about our offer. $4.2 billion, full acquisition. We buy every share, assume their debt, and take complete control of the company. Based on our analysis of their financial situation, they'll accept. They have to accept. They're drowning, and we're offering them a life preserver. Another team member, Sarah from legal, chimes in. Marissa, I've reviewed their financials in detail. This airline is a mess. Their fleet is aging, with an average aircraft age of 17 years. Industry standard is 12. Their customer satisfaction scores are the lowest among major carriers. They've hemorrhaged market share for 5 consecutive years. And that's not even the worst part. What's the worst part? Marissa asks, though something in her tone suggests she already knows. The lawsuits. They've settled 43 discrimination lawsuits in the past 8 years, quietly, with non-disclosure agreements. Everything from racial profiling to disability discrimination to gender-based harassment. They've paid out over $18 million to make these cases disappear. And based on the pattern I'm seeing, there are likely dozens more incidents that never made it to court because the victims were too intimidated or too exhausted to fight. Marissa's expression hardens. $18 million spent covering up discrimination instead of fixing the culture that caused it. 43 lawsuits, 43 people who were humiliated, degraded, treated as less than human, just like she was today. And this airline chose to pay them off and continue business as usual, rather than address the systemic rot at the core of their operations. James pulls up Skyward's financial reports, and Marissa studies them with the analytical mind that made her billions. Revenue down. Costs up. Customer complaints at an all-time high. Employee turnover approaching 60% in some departments. This isn't just a struggling airline. This is a failing airline, kept alive only by legacy brand recognition and the reluctance of their board to admit defeat. They're vulnerable, Marissa says quietly. Desperate, which means they'll accept almost any reasonable offer just to survive. Exactly, James confirms. Our offer isn't just reasonable, it's generous given their situation. We're offering to save them from bankruptcy. The board would be insane to refuse. But Marissa isn't really listening anymore. She's staring at something on her own screen, a file she's pulled up separately. It's an old employee record, a personnel file from 15 years ago. And the name at the top makes her throat tighten. Charles Bennett. Baggage handler. Employee ID 847392. The memories flood back, but this time, Marissa doesn't push them away. She lets herself remember her father coming home that day 15 years ago with a termination letter in his hand and devastation in his eyes. He'd been with Skyward for 30 years. 30 years of loyalty, of showing up before dawn, of working holidays, of taking pride in a uniform that bore the Skyward logo. But Charles Bennett made a mistake. He reported safety violations. He saw baggage handlers being pressured to overload cargo holds beyond safe limits to save time. He documented equipment failures that were being ignored. He went to his supervisors, then to their supervisors, following every proper channel. He believed that if he just followed the rules, if he just did the right thing, the company would listen. Instead, they fired him. The official reason? Performance issues. Suddenly, after 30 years of exemplary service, Charles Bennett was deemed unfit for his position. His personnel file was filled with fabricated complaints, written performance reviews that contradicted decades of positive evaluations. It was retaliation, pure and simple, and everyone knew it. But Charles didn't have the resources to fight a major corporation. He didn't have the money for lawyers or the energy for a prolonged legal battle. 6 months later, Charles Bennett died of a stress-induced heart attack. He was 58 years old. The doctors said it was his heart, but Marissa knew the truth. Skyward Airlines killed her father, not directly, not criminally, but they killed him nonetheless. They took his dignity, his purpose, his belief that hard work and integrity mattered. And without those things, her father simply couldn't go on. Marissa closes the personnel file and looks back at her team on the video call. Her voice, when she speaks, is different, harder. This isn't just business anymore. This is personal. James nods slowly. I understand. What do you want us to do? Dig deeper. I want to know everything about Skyward Airlines' discrimination issues. Every complaint, every settlement, every buried incident. I want names of the employees who were repeat offenders. I want to know which managers knew about the problems and covered them up. I want documentation that proves this isn't just a few bad apples, but a rotten culture from top to bottom. Her team exchanges glances. They've worked with Marissa long enough to know that tone. This isn't about profit anymore. This is about justice. Over the next several hours, Marissa and her team tear through Skyward Airlines records. What they find is damning. There's a pattern, clear and undeniable, of discrimination that's been systematically ignored and buried by management. Gate manager Robert, the man who had Marissa forcibly removed from first class, has 47 documented complaints against him spanning 8 years. 47 times that passengers, almost exclusively passengers of color, reported being treated with suspicion, having their tickets questioned, being subjected to additional screening, or being removed from flights. And yet Robert is still employed, still in a position of authority, still terrorizing passengers who don't fit his narrow definition of who belongs in first class. Flight attendant Derek has 31 complaints. The pattern is similar. Black passengers, Latino passengers, passengers with accents or ethnic names, all reporting being treated rudely, being questioned about their seats, being made to feel unwelcome. 31 complaints. And Derek is still serving drinks in first class, still mocking passengers in the galley, still confident that his behavior carries no consequences. Karen from the check-in counter has been flagged by HR twice for racial profiling. Twice she's been warned that her pattern of scrutinizing certain passengers identification more thoroughly than others could expose the company to legal liability. But the warnings were just that. Warnings. No real discipline, no mandatory training, no transfer to a position where she couldn't harm people. Just a note in her file and a suggestion to be more careful. And every single one of these incidents was buried. Complaints were filed, then mysteriously closed without proper investigation. Passengers who threatened legal action were quickly offered settlement money and non-disclosure agreements. Employees who showed patterns of discrimination were quietly shuffled to different routes or different shifts, but never actually held accountable. The culture of discrimination at Skyward Airlines isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's baked into the system, protected by layers of corporate bureaucracy designed to shield the company from liability rather than actually fix the problem. Marissa compiles all of this documentation into a single devastating file. Then she picks up her phone and dials a number she had to pull some strings to obtain. The direct line to Thomas Price, chairman of Skyward Airlines Board of Directors. The phone rings 3 times before a distinguished voice answers. Thomas Price speaking. Mr. Price? This is Marissa Bennett. I believe your board is expecting my acquisition offer for Friday's emergency session. There's a pause. Thomas Price is 72 years old, a veteran of the airline industry, a man who sat on Skyward's board for over 2 decades. He's used to being in control of conversations, but something in Marissa's tone puts him on edge. Miss Bennett, yes, your offer has been reviewed. It's generous, given our current market position. But I have to tell you, Skyward is more than a company. It's an institution. We've been flying for 78 years. Many on the board are reluctant to see that legacy fall into the hands of an outsider. An outsider. The word hangs in the air, loaded with meaning. Marissa hears what he's really saying. She's an outsider because she's not part of their old boys club. She's an outsider because she's a woman. She's an outsider because she's black. The same prejudices that got her thrown out of first class are now playing out at the board level. Mr. Price, Marissa says, her voice deadly calm. You're right that Skyward is an institution, but let me tell you what kind of institution it is. It's an institution built on discrimination and covered-up complaints. It's an institution that has paid out $18 million in the last 8 years alone to silence victims of racial profiling, harassment, and abuse. It's an institution that employs people like Robert, Derek, and Karen, who have dozens of complaints against them, but face 0 consequences. The silence on the other end of the line is deafening. Marissa continues, I have documentation of every buried complaint, every quiet settlement, every instance where your management chose profit over people and protection over accountability. I have personnel files showing that employees with clear patterns of discrimination are not only kept on staff, but promoted. I have evidence that this rot goes all the way to the top, to executives who knew about these issues and actively worked to cover them up. Thomas Price finally finds his voice. But it's shaken. Ms. Bennett, I don't know what you think you've found, but I'm not here to destroy Skyward, Mr. Price. I'm here to transform it. Friday, 9 a.m. I want full board approval for my acquisition. I want unanimous consent, and I want it without delays or negotiations. And if we refuse, Thomas asks, but his voice has lost all its authority. Marissa doesn't hesitate. Then Monday morning, every news outlet in the country gets these files. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, The New York Times, The Washington Post, every major publication. I'll hold a press conference detailing exactly how Skyward Airlines has systematically discriminated against passengers and employees while paying millions to cover it up. I'll name names, show documents, provide testimony. Your stock price will tank. Your board members will face shareholder lawsuits. Your executives will be called before congressional committees. The institution you're so proud of will be remembered not for 78 years of service, but for decades of discrimination. She pauses, letting that sink in. Or you can approve my offer Friday morning. Let me take over and give Skyward a chance at redemption. Your choice, Mr. Price. But I need your answer now. The silence stretches for what feels like an eternity. Finally, Thomas Price speaks, and he sounds like a man who's just realized he's been checkmated. I'll speak to the board. We'll approve your offer on Friday. I thought you might, Marissa says. One more thing, Mr. Price. When I take over Skyward, there's going to be a thorough investigation into every discrimination complaint that was buried. Every employee who enabled this culture will face consequences. Every policy that allowed this to happen will be rewritten. This institution is going to change, whether it wants to or not. She hangs up without waiting for a response. For a moment, Marissa just sits there, processing what she's just done. She's about to buy a major airline, not for profit or prestige, but for justice. For her father, for herself, for every person who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. But there's one more call she needs to make. She pulls out her personal phone and dials her daughter. Maya answers on the second ring, and Marissa can hear music playing in the background. "Hey Mom, you okay? You sound different. What happened?" And just like that, all of Marissa's carefully constructed professional armor cracks. This is her baby, her daughter, the person who matters more to her than any business deal or any revenge plot. "Maya, something happened on my flight today. I was removed from first class even though I had a valid ticket. They escorted me out like I was a criminal, put me in a broken middle seat in coach. And the whole time, all I could think about was you, about what you told me yesterday, about that teacher who didn't think you belonged in AP classes." She hears Maya's sharp intake of breath. "Mom, that's awful. You should sue them." "You should. I'm going to do something better, baby. I'm going to change the entire system." Marissa's voice is steady now, filled with purpose. "Your grandfather spent 30 years serving an airline that never saw his value. They used him. And when he tried to do the right thing, they destroyed him, they took his dignity, and it killed him. But his daughter? She's about to own them." "What do you mean, own them?" "I mean, I'm buying Skyward Airlines, Maya, the whole company. And when I do, I'm going to make sure that what happened to your grandfather, what happened to me, never happens to anyone else. I'm going to root out every discriminatory practice, fire every employee who thinks treating people with respect is optional, and rebuild this airline from the ground up." Maya is quiet for a moment, processing. Then, her voice thick with emotion. "Grandpa would be so proud of you, Mom. You're going to do what he couldn't. You're going to fight back and win." Marissa feels tears threatening, but these are different from the ones she held back on that plane. These are tears of resolution, of purpose. "We're going to make sure no one else's father goes through what ours did, baby. No one else is going to lose their dignity, their job, their life because they tried to do the right thing. And no one else is going to sit in a first-class seat they paid for and be treated like they stole it." After she hangs up with Maya, Marissa sits alone in her hotel room. She walks over to her suitcase and pulls out something she carries with her everywhere. A framed photograph of her father in his Skyward Airlines uniform. It was taken on his 25th anniversary with the company, 5 years before they fired him. In the photo, Charles Bennett is smiling, proud, standing in front of a Skyward plane with his arms crossed. He looks strong, capable, dignified. Marissa traces her finger along the Skyward logo on his uniform. "I'm about to own this, Daddy," she whispers to the photo. "That logo you wore so proudly? It's going to mean something again. It's going to stand for fairness, for dignity, for the values you tried to uphold. They broke you, but they're not going to break me, and they're never going to break anyone else ever again." She sets the photo down and looks out at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere out there, Robert is probably at home, not giving a second thought to the black woman he removed from first class today. Derek is probably telling the story to friends, laughing about the passenger who thought she belonged in first class. Karen is probably sleeping peacefully, unaware that her pattern of racial profiling has finally been documented in a way she can't escape. And Thomas Price is probably making emergency calls to board members, trying to figure out how to salvage their control of an airline that's about to slip through their fingers. But none of them understand yet. None of them realize that the woman they humiliated, the woman they underestimated, the woman they treated as less than human, is about to become their boss. And when she does, justice won't just be served. It will be revolutionary. Have you ever wanted to fight back against a system that treated you unfairly? Have you ever wished you had the power to change things from the inside? Drop your thoughts in the comments. because what happens when Marissa walks into that boardroom is going to be absolutely epic. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because the confrontation coming up is something you absolutely cannot miss. Marissa Bennett is about to teach Skyward Airlines the most expensive lesson in corporate history, and she's going to do it with the same calm, controlled power that kept her composed when they threw her out of first class. Because that's what true power looks like. Not rage, not revenge, but transformation. And transformation is coming. Friday morning, Dallas, Texas, Skyward Airlines headquarters. This is the moment everything changes. Marissa Bennett steps out of a black town car in front of a gleaming glass tower that bears the Skyward Airlines logo. That same logo her father wore on his uniform for 30 years. But today, Marissa isn't here as a passenger. She isn't here to be questioned, scrutinized, or humiliated. Today, she's here as a conqueror. She's wearing a tailored charcoal power suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. Her briefcase is Italian leather, her heels are Louboutin, and her expression is absolutely unreadable. Behind her, stepping out of 2 additional vehicles, are her legal team and her CFO James. They're dressed for battle, carrying boxes of documentation, laptops, contracts. This isn't just a business meeting, this is an invasion. The lobby of Skyward headquarters is all polished marble and corporate prestige. Vintage posters of Skyward planes from different eras line the walls. There's a massive display showing real-time flight information from around the world. Hundreds of Skyward planes in the air at this very moment. The company wants everyone who walks through these doors to be impressed, to feel the weight of their 78-year legacy. But Marissa isn't impressed. She's calculating. Every piece of art, every expensive fixture, every carefully designed element of this lobby represents shareholder money that could have been spent addressing the discrimination complaints instead of covering them up. She walks up to the reception desk with her team flanking her like an honor guard. The young receptionist looks up with a practiced smile that falters slightly when she sees the group of serious-looking people approaching. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Marissa's voice is calm, professional, but it carries an undercurrent of absolute authority. "I'm Marissa Bennett. The board is expecting me." The receptionist's fingers hover over her keyboard, confusion crossing her face. She glances at her schedule, then back at Marissa. "I'm sorry, I don't see your name on the calendar for today. Do you have an appointment?" Before Marissa can respond, James steps forward and slides a document across the desk. "Miss Bennett is here for the emergency board meeting regarding the acquisition proposal. Chairman Price should have informed your office." The receptionist's eyes widen as she scans the document. Emergency board meeting, acquisition proposal. These aren't normal words in her daily vocabulary. She picks up her phone with slightly trembling hands and dials an extension. "Mr. Price? There's a Ms. Bennett here for—" "Yes, sir. Right away." She hangs up and her professional mask is completely gone now, replaced with barely concealed shock. "Someone will be right down to escort you." And someone is. Within 60 seconds, the elevator doors open and out steps David Thornton, CEO of Skyward Airlines. David is in his early 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that comes from weekends on a yacht. He's wearing a suit that costs as much as a used car, and he's trying very hard to look like he's in control of this situation. But Marissa can see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. David Thornton knows exactly who Marissa Bennett is. He spent the last 3 days since Thomas Price's phone call researching her, trying to figure out how a woman he'd never heard of could suddenly be in a position to buy his airline, and what he found terrified him. "Miss Bennett," David says, extending his hand with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Welcome to Skyward headquarters. I'm David Thornton, CEO. Please follow me. The board is assembled and ready for your presentation." Marissa shakes his hand with a grip that's firm but not aggressive, professional but not friendly. "Mr. Thornton, thank you for accommodating this meeting on such short notice." David leads them toward a private elevator, one that requires a key card to access. As they wait for the elevator, he makes small talk, the kind of meaningless corporate chatter designed to fill silence and maintain the illusion of control. "I trust your flight was comfortable this time?" There's something in his tone that suggests he knows about her experience earlier in the week. That word has already spread through the executive ranks about the passenger who was removed from first class. Marissa's smile is razor sharp. My flight was educational, Mr. Thornton. Very educational indeed. The elevator rises in silence. Marissa can feel David stealing glances at her, trying to assess her, trying to figure out her angle. He's used to acquisitions, but they usually come from other airlines, from private equity firms, from people he knows and understands. Marissa Bennett is an unknown quantity, and that makes her dangerous. The elevator opens onto the executive floor, and David leads them down a hallway lined with photographs. Company history, frozen in black and white and color. Planes from different eras. Executives shaking hands with presidents and celebrities, employees receiving awards and recognition. And then Marissa sees it. She stops walking, causing her entire team to halt behind her. It's a photograph from 2009, part of a display honoring long-term employees. There are dozens of faces, all people who'd served Skyward for 25 years or more. And there, in the third row, is a face Marissa would recognize anywhere. Her father, Charles Bennett. Younger, healthier, full of pride. He's wearing his baggage handler uniform, standing straight and tall. Below the photo is a nameplate, slightly tarnished now but still readable. Charles Bennett, Baggage Operations, 1985 to 2010. Marissa's hand rises to touch the photograph, her fingers hovering just inches from the glass. 25 years of service commemorated in a single photo on a wall that thousands of executives have walked past without a second glance. Her father was proud to be in this photo. She remembers him coming home that day, excited that the company was finally recognizing his dedication. 1 year later, they would erase that dedication by firing him under false pretenses. David Thornton notices her pause and follows her gaze. When he sees what she's looking at, something flickers across his face. Recognition? Concern? Guilt? Miss Bennett, is everything all right? Marissa drops her hand and turns to face him. Everything is fine, Mr. Thornton. Just appreciating your company's history. Shall we proceed? David nods, but Marissa can see that he's rattled. He leads them the rest of the way to the boardroom doors, then pauses with his hand on the handle. Miss Bennett, I should mention that the board is traditional. They may ask pointed questions. I hope you're prepared for some skepticism. Marissa's smile doesn't waver. Mr. Thornton, I'm prepared for anything. He opens the doors, and Marissa steps into the boardroom like she's stepping onto a battlefield. And in many ways, she is. The room is exactly what you'd expect from a major corporation. A massive mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Dallas, a presentation screen at one end. Seated around the table are 12 board members, and Marissa's initial assessment was correct. They're almost all older white men. 11 men, 1 woman. Average age appears to be somewhere north of 65. These are people who've been in power for so long they've forgotten what it's like to be challenged. At the head of the table sits Thomas Price, the board chairman. Marissa spoke to on the phone. He stands as she enters, and the rest of the board follows his lead, a ripple of expensive suits rising from leather chairs. Miss Bennett, Thomas says, gesturing to a seat opposite him. Thank you for coming. Your acquisition offer is unexpected, to say the least. Please, have a seat, and you can present your proposal to the board. Marissa doesn't sit. Instead, she walks to the presentation screen, James following with a laptop. Gentlemen and Miss Reynolds, she nods to the lone female board member, I appreciate your time. But before I present my proposal, I think it's important we all understand exactly what we're discussing here. She connects James's laptop to the presentation screen, and the Skyward Airlines logo appears, large and prominent. Skyward Airlines, 78 years of service, a legacy brand that once stood for excellence, reliability, and customer service. That's what you want me to see, correct? That's the institution you're so proud of? Thomas nods cautiously. We've built something meaningful over nearly 8 decades, yes. Marissa advances the slide, and suddenly the screen shows a very different picture. A graph of Skyward's stock price over the past 5 years, showing a devastating decline. What's unexpected, Mr. Price, is that you're still in business given your operational failures. The room tenses. Board members shift in their seats. David Thornton's jaw tightens. Marissa continues, her voice steady and factual, like she's presenting quarterly earnings rather than dismantling a company's reputation. In the past 5 years, Skyward has discontinued 47 routes due to poor performance. Customer complaints are up 89%. Employee satisfaction is at a record low, with turnover in some departments approaching 60%. Your fleet is aging, with an average aircraft age of 17 years compared to the industry standard of 12. You're hemorrhaging money, losing market share, and your brand reputation is in freefall. She clicks to the next slide, showing financial projections. At your current trajectory, Skyward Airlines will be insolvent within 18 months. You're not here today because my offer is attractive. You're here because it's your only lifeline. A board member, a man in his 70s with a red face that's getting redder, interrupts. Now, see here, Miss Bennett. We've had a difficult few years, certainly, but every airline has faced challenges. The pandemic, fuel costs, labor negotiations. Marissa cuts him off with a look that could freeze fire. You've had a culture problem for decades, and I have proof. She advances the slide again, and now the screen shows something that makes every person in that room go pale. A comprehensive breakdown of discrimination complaints, organized by employee. Robert Henderson, Gate Manager, Dallas Hub. 47 documented complaints over 8 years. Passengers reporting racial profiling, discriminatory seat reassignments, and hostile treatment. 47 complaints, and not only is Mr. Henderson still employed, he's been promoted twice during that period. The board members are frozen, staring at the screen like it's showing evidence of a crime, which, in many ways, it is. Marissa clicks to the next slide. Derek Morrison, flight attendant. 31 complaints over 5 years, pattern of discriminatory behavior toward passengers of color, documented instances of providing inferior service based on race, multiple reports of making passengers feel unwelcome in first class. Still employed, still serving on premium routes. Another click. Karen Williams, check-in supervisor. 28 complaints over 6 years. Flagged twice by your own HR department for racial profiling, with specific warnings that her behavior could expose the company to legal liability. Still in a customer-facing role, still making passengers feel like criminals for presenting valid identification. Marissa turns from the screen to face the board directly. And these are just 3 examples. I have documentation of hundreds of similar cases across your organization. Discrimination that was reported, investigated, and then systematically buried to avoid bad publicity and legal liability. Thomas Price finds his voice, though it's shakier than before. Ms. Bennett, every large organization receives complaints. We have procedures for addressing. You have procedures for covering up, Marissa interrupts. In the past 8 years alone, Skyward has paid out over $18 million in quiet settlements with non-disclosure agreements. $18 million to make victims of discrimination disappear, rather than addressing the culture that created those victims in the first place. She advances to another slide, this one showing a web of connections between complaints, settlements, and management decisions. Every single one of these cases followed the same pattern. Complaint filed, minimal investigation, generous settlement offer, paired with an NDA, case closed. And the employees responsible? They faced no meaningful consequences. Some were even rewarded with promotions and bonuses. The room is completely silent now. Even David Thornton, who surely knew some of this, looks shaken by seeing it laid out so comprehensively. Marissa's voice drops lower, more intense. This isn't just bad business, gentlemen. This is a systemic failure of leadership. This is a culture that values profit over people, reputation over responsibility, silence over solutions, and it ends today. Thomas Price tries to regain control of the meeting. Miss Bennett, this is business. Complex business with legal implications and historical context. Let's not make it personal. And there it is. The phrase that breaks whatever restraint Marissa has been holding on to. She turns to face Thomas directly, and when she speaks, her voice is quiet, but carries to every corner of that boardroom. It became personal when you fired my father, Charles Bennett. The room doesn't just go quiet, it goes silent. The kind of silence that feels heavy, oppressive, like the air itself is holding its breath. Thomas Price's face loses all color. Your father? Charles Bennett, baggage handler for 30 years. Employee ID 847392. I believe you passed his photograph in the hallway on your way in here this morning, Mr. Price. He's in the 25-year service recognition display. Marissa advances the presentation to a new slide, and there it is, her father's personnel file, displayed for everyone to see. Charles Bennett joined Skyward in 1985. For 30 years, he showed up early, worked hard, took pride in his uniform. He believed in this company. He believed that Skyward stood for something. She clicks to the next slide showing his performance reviews. Perfect marks, year after year, commendations for going above and beyond, awards for safety compliance. This is the record of a model employee, wouldn't you say? The board members stare at the screen, unable to deny what they're seeing. But in 2010, Charles Bennett made a mistake. Marissa's voice is steady, but there's an undercurrent of pain that wasn't there before. He reported safety violations. Baggage handlers were being pressured to overload cargo holds beyond safe limits to save time and reduce costs. Equipment failures were being ignored. My father documented everything, followed every proper channel, believed that management would want to know about these risks. She clicks again, and now the screen shows his termination letter. Instead, you fired him. Suddenly, after 30 years of exemplary service, Charles Bennett was deemed inadequate. Performance issues, the file says. A few conveniently dated poor reviews appeared in his record. Complaints from supervisors that contradicted 3 decades of positive evaluations. David Thornton shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Miss Bennett, I don't recall that specific case. We have thousands of employees, and personnel decisions are made at multiple levels. Marissa cuts him off by clicking to the next slide. It's a memo, dated 3 weeks before her father's termination. The subject line reads, Baggage Handler Charles Bennett, Retaliation Recommendation. The room erupts in whispers. A recommendation for retaliation, in writing, in an official company document. You don't recall it, Mr. Thornton, because your signature is right there at the bottom, approving the termination. Marissa's voice is like ice. My father reported safety violations that could have prevented accidents, saved lives, protected this company from liability. And your response was to systematically destroy his career. She advances to the final slide, and the image that appears makes several board members actually gasp. It's a photograph of Charles Bennett, the same one Marissa showed to Maya, the same one she carries with her everywhere. Her father in his Skyward uniform, proud and strong, taken just months before they fired him. He died 6 months later, Marissa says. And now there's no hiding the emotion in her voice. Stress-induced heart attack. He was 58 years old. The doctor said it was his heart, but I know the truth. You destroyed him. You took a man who defined himself by his work, by his integrity, by his belief that doing the right thing mattered, and you crushed him for trying to protect people. She turns away from the screen to face the board directly. My father believed in this airline. He wore that uniform with pride. He brought me to the airport as a little girl and told me that Skyward connected the world, that it was something special. He dedicated 30 years of his life to this institution. Her voice rises now, filled with righteous anger. And you destroyed him. You retaliated against him for trying to keep people safe. You fabricated performance issues to justify firing a man who'd given you 3 decades of loyalty. You made him feel worthless, purposeless, like everything he'd worked for meant nothing. And 6 months later, his heart gave out from the stress of it all. Marissa plants her hands on the table, leaning forward. So no, Mr. Price, this isn't just business. This became personal the moment you decided my father's integrity was less important than your bottom line. This became personal when you chose to silence a whistleblower rather than address the safety issues he raised. This became personal when you killed my father. The board members are stunned into absolute silence. Some won't meet her eyes. David Thornton looks like he wants to disappear into his chair. Even Thomas Price, who's faced hostile takeovers and corporate battles, looks shaken to his core. Marissa straightens up, composing herself. Now his daughter is here to rebuild what you corrupted. I'm not here to destroy Skyward Airlines. I'm here to transform it into what my father believed it could be. A company that actually values safety over profit. A company that treats employees with dignity, regardless of their position. A company where doing the right thing is rewarded, not punished. She turns back to the screen and advances to a new slide, this one showing the terms of her acquisition offer. $4.2 billion for complete acquisition of Skyward Airlines, full assumption of debt, immediate implementation of comprehensive diversity and inclusion reforms, mandatory investigation of every buried discrimination complaint, termination, with cause for any employee with documented patterns of discriminatory behavior, complete overhaul of company culture from the ground up. Marissa looks at each board member in turn. You can accept this offer and give Skyward a chance at redemption, a chance to become the airline my father believed it was. Or you can refuse. And Monday morning, every piece of documentation I've shown you today goes to the media. Every news outlet, every regulatory agency, every platform that will listen. The world will learn exactly what kind of institution Skyward really is. She pauses, letting that sink in. Your stock price will crater. Shareholders will file lawsuits, employees will walk out, customers will boycott. The Skyward name won't just be tarnished, it will be synonymous with discrimination and corporate corruption. The 78-year legacy you're so proud of will be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Thomas Price looks around the table at his fellow board members. Several are nodding almost imperceptibly. They understand the choice they're facing. It's not really a choice at all. Ms. Bennett, Thomas says slowly, your offer is comprehensive. The board will need time to discuss. You have 5 minutes, Marissa interrupts. My legal team is outside with all the necessary paperwork. 5 minutes to decide whether you want to save this airline or watch it burn. The clock starts now. She walks to the door, her team following. Just before she exits, she turns back to look at the boardroom one more time. 12 powerful people, all of whom have been outmaneuvered, outthought, and outplayed by the daughter of a baggage handler they destroyed 15 years ago. Oh, and gentlemen, Marissa adds, that gate manager Robert, the flight attendant Derek, the check-in supervisor Karen, if you approve this acquisition, their terminations will be effective immediately. Consider it a non-negotiable term of the deal. She steps out of the boardroom, and the heavy doors close behind her with a sound like a judge's gavel falling. In the hallway, James looks at her with something approaching awe. That was incredible. You had them completely cornered. Marissa takes a deep breath, steadying herself. The adrenaline is still coursing through her veins, the emotion of talking about her father still raw. They cornered themselves, James. We just showed them the cage they built. Through the closed doors, they can hear the muffled sounds of heated discussion. Voices are raised. Arguments are being made, but Marissa knows how this ends. She's given them no real choice, and they know it. 4 minutes and 37 seconds later, the boardroom doors open. Thomas Price steps out, and his expression tells Marissa everything she needs to know before he says a word. Ms. Bennett, he says, his voice heavy with defeat, the board has voted. We accept your offer. Skyward Airlines is yours. Marissa nods, showing no triumph, no celebration. This isn't a victory to gloat over. This is justice, finally served after 15 years of waiting. Have your legal team review the contracts, she tells James. I want everything finalized by end of business today. As Thomas turns to go back into the boardroom, Marissa calls out to him. Mr. Price? One more thing. He turns back, looking older than he did an hour ago. My father's photo in the hallway? I want it moved to a place of honor in the main lobby, with a new plaque that tells the truth. Charles Bennett, whistleblower, who tried to make Skyward safer and paid with his career and his life. He's going to be remembered properly now. Thomas nods weakly and disappears back into the boardroom. Marissa walks back down the hallway, past the employee photos, past the corporate art, past all the trappings of a legacy built on a foundation of discrimination and silence. She stops once more at her father's photograph. It's done, Daddy, she whispers to the image. The airline is ours now, and I'm going to make it everything you believed it could be. She touches the photograph gently, then turns and walks toward the elevator. Behind her, the Skyward Airlines headquarters continues its daily operations, completely unaware that in the span of 1 hour, everything has changed. The daughter of a baggage handler now owns the airline. And she's about to teach the entire industry what real accountability looks like. The boardroom doors close behind Marissa, and she can hear the muffled chaos erupting inside. Voices overlap, some angry, some defeated, all desperate. These 12 people, who've controlled Skyward Airlines for decades, are now scrambling to figure out how to maintain even a shred of dignity in their surrender. James stands beside Marissa in the hallway, and he's looking at her with an expression that's equal parts admiration and disbelief. "That was powerful," he says quietly. "They'll accept. They have no choice." Marissa leans against the wall, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, she lets herself feel the weight of it all. The humiliation on the plane, the ruined investor meeting, the late nights researching Skyward's corruption, the confrontation she just had in that boardroom. It's exhausting, but it's also necessary. "This was never about revenge, James," she says, her voice softer now, more reflective. "It's about change. Real, lasting change. My father can't be brought back. Those years of humiliation I've faced, that Maya will face, they can't be erased. But maybe we can make sure the next generation doesn't have to fight the same battles." James nods. "You're going to transform this airline. I'm going to try." They wait in the hallway, and Marissa finds herself walking back to her father's photograph. Shun studies his face, seeing echoes of herself in his features, in his expression. Charles Bennett believed in doing the right thing, even when it cost him everything. And now his daughter is about to honor that belief in a way he never could have imagined. 15 minutes pass. 15 minutes that feel like hours. Marissa can hear the discussion through the doors intensifying, then gradually quieting. Arguments are being settled. Votes are being cast. A 78-year-old institution is changing hands. Finally, the boardroom doors open. Thomas Price steps out, and the moment Marissa sees his face, she knows. This man, who's been chairman of Skyward's board for over 2 decades, who's navigated corporate battles and hostile takeovers, who's always maintained absolute control, looks utterly defeated. "Miss Bennett," he says, his voice carrying none of its earlier authority. "The board has voted. We accept your acquisition offer." Marissa doesn't smile, doesn't celebrate, she simply nods, acknowledging the inevitable. Thomas continues, and you can hear the pain in every word. "Skyward Airlines will become a Bennett Holdings company, effective immediately. All terms of your offer are accepted without modification." Before anyone can say anything else, David Thornton, the CEO who escorted Marissa up to this boardroom just an hour ago, stands from his seat at the table. His face is ashen, his expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume he no longer has the right to wear. "I resign," David says, his voice barely above a whisper, "effective immediately. I won't be part of." He can't even finish the sentence. He gathers his briefcase and walks out of the boardroom without looking at anyone, a man who knows his career just ended in spectacular failure. The remaining board members watch him leave, and you can see the reality settling over them. This isn't just a change in ownership. This is a complete dismantling of everything they've built, everything they've protected, every compromise they've made in the name of profit and reputation. Thomas gestures back toward the boardroom. "Miss Bennett, would you like to come in? The board would like to know your plans for the airline." Marissa enters the boardroom again, but this time it's different. She's not a visitor anymore. She's the owner. Every person in this room now works for her, reports to her, answers to her. The power dynamic has completely shifted. She stands at the head of the table, the same place Thomas Price stood an hour ago when he thought he was in control. "Gentlemen, Miss Reynolds, let me tell you exactly what's going to happen to Skyward Airlines." Her voice is clear, authoritative, leaving no room for debate. "First, there will be a complete diversity and inclusion overhaul. Not a training session, not a workshop, not a half measure. I'm talking about a fundamental transformation of this company's culture, from the executive suite to the baggage handlers." She looks at each board member as she continues. "Second, we're implementing an anonymous complaint system with third-party investigation. Every complaint will be taken seriously, investigated thoroughly, and resolved transparently. No more buried reports. No more quiet settlements. No more protecting problematic employees at the expense of victims." One of the board members, an older man who hasn't spoken until now, raises a tentative hand. "Ms. Bennett, these changes will be expensive. Our profit margins are already..." Marissa cuts him off. "Third, we're implementing an employee profit-sharing program. Every employee, from pilots to cleaning staff, will share in the company's success. When Skyward does well, everyone does well. That's how you build loyalty. That's how you create a culture where people actually care about the company they work for. She advances through her mental checklist, each item delivered with absolute certainty. Fourth, fleet modernization. We're replacing every aircraft over 15 years old within the next 3 years. And we're not just focusing on efficiency, we're focusing on comfort and accessibility. Wider seats, better legroom, accommodations for passengers with disabilities, technology that actually works. Flying shouldn't be torture for anyone, regardless of what class they're sitting in. Marissa pauses, and her expression softens slightly. Fifth, we're establishing partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities for pilot training programs, full scholarships for qualified students. Skyward is going to actively work to diversify the aviation industry, not just talk about it. She takes a breath, and now her voice carries steel again. And sixth, effective immediately, Robert Henderson, Derek Morrison, and Karen Williams are terminated with cause. Their patterns of discrimination are documented, inexcusable, and will no longer be tolerated at this airline. Any other employee with similar documented patterns will face the same consequence. The room is absolutely silent. These aren't suggestions. These aren't proposals up for debate. These are directives from the new owner, and everyone in this room understands that resistance is futile. But then Marissa's expression changes. The hardness softens, and what replaces it is something deeper, more emotional. "But here's what matters most to me," she says, her voice quieter now, but somehow more powerful. "I'm establishing the Charles Bennett Memorial Scholarship. It will provide full college tuition for children of Skyward employees who want to pursue careers in aviation or business. Every year, we'll send at least 50 kids to college, completely funded. Room, board, tuition, books, everything." She has to pause for a moment, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "My father never got to see me graduate from college. He died before I could show him what his belief in me had created. But other parents? They're going to see their children soar. They're going to watch their kids walk across that graduation stage. They're going to know that their years of service to this airline meant something." And for the first time since this meeting began, Marissa sees genuine emotion on the faces of the board members. A few have tears in their eyes. Miss Reynolds, the lone woman on the board, is openly crying. Even Thomas Price, who's spent the last hour looking defeated and defensive, seems moved by this. Because this isn't about revenge anymore. This is about legacy. This is about taking something broken and building something beautiful from the pieces. This is about making sure Charles Bennett's death meant something. "Questions?" Marissa asks. No one speaks. What is there to say? Marissa Bennett has just outlined a complete transformation of Skyward Airlines, and everyone in this room knows it's going to happen exactly as she described. "Then we're done here," Marissa says. "My legal team will finalize the paperwork. By end of business today, I want all transition documents signed. Tomorrow morning, I want every employee in this company to receive a memo explaining the changes. And next week, we begin the real work." She turns to leave, then pauses at the door. "Oh, and one more thing. I'm going to need a new CEO. Someone who actually believes in the vision I just outlined. If any of you know someone who fits that description, send me their resume. Otherwise, I'll find them myself." Marissa walks out of the boardroom for the final time, and the hallway suddenly feels different. This isn't someone else's building anymore. This is hers. Every floor, every office, every plane that bears the Skyward logo now belongs to Bennett Holdings. Belongs to her. She walks through the executive floor with her team behind her, but word has already spread. Employees are emerging from offices, peeking around corners, whispering. Some of them have their phones out, and Marissa realizes with a start that they're comparing her to the viral videos from the flight. The woman who was thrown out of first class is now walking through headquarters as the owner. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Marissa makes her way back to the hallway with the employee photographs. She stops at her father's picture one more time, and this time she doesn't just look at it. She makes a decision. "James," she says, turning to her CFO, "I want this photograph moved. Main lobby, prominent position, where everyone who enters this building will see it. Of course, James says, already making notes. And I want a new plaque, not just his name and dates. I want it to say, Charles Bennett, 1952 to 2010. Integrity over convenience. In his honor, we fly better. James looks up from his notes, and there's understanding in his expression. That's perfect, Marissa. That's exactly right. 3 days later, Marissa finds herself back at an airport, but this time is different. This time, she's not a passenger trying to get to a meeting. She's the owner of the airline, making her first official flight as the new head of Skyward Airlines. She arrives at the terminal, and the difference is immediately apparent. The check-in staff, all wearing updated uniforms that Marissa personally approved, greet her with genuine warmth. Not because she's the owner, but because they've already heard about the changes coming. The profit-sharing program, the scholarship fund, the commitment to dignity and respect. Marissa checks in for her flight without incident. No questioning of her ID, no suspicious glances, no whispered phone calls to supervisors, just professional, courteous service. At the gate, she's invited to board early with first class. She walks down the jetway, and this time there's no knot of anxiety in her stomach. This time, she knows exactly where she belongs. Seat 2A, the same seat she was ripped from just a week ago. The flight attendant who greets her as she boards is a young black woman, part of the new hiring initiative Marissa implemented on day one. The crew is visibly diverse now, different races, different ages, different backgrounds, all wearing the Skyward uniform with pride. "Welcome aboard, Miss Bennett," the flight attendant says with a genuine smile. "Is there anything we can get you?" Marissa settles into her seat, the seat she paid for, the seat she deserves, and smiles back. Just a safe flight. That's all anyone deserves. The flight attendant nods, understanding the weight of those words, and moves on to greet other passengers. As the plane fills up, Marissa opens her laptop. She has work to do, changes to implement, policies to write, a culture to transform. But for now, she allows herself a moment to simply sit in this seat and feel what victory actually means. The plane pushes back from the gate. The engines power up. And as Skyward Flight 847, she made sure it was that flight number, her father's employee ID, lifts off the runway. Marissa looks out the window at the world below. She thinks about her father, watching planes take off from the employee parking lot, telling her she'd fly so high one day. He was right. She's flying higher than he ever imagined. Not just in this plane, but in what she's accomplished. In what she's changing. 6 months later, the transformation is complete. Skyward Airlines goes from one of the lowest-rated carriers to the highest-rated for both customer satisfaction and employee retention. The Charles Bennett Memorial Scholarship sends its first class of students to college, 53 children of Skyward employees, all fully funded, all pursuing their dreams. Robert, Derek, and Karen are gone, replaced by employees who actually believe in service and dignity. The discrimination complaints drop to nearly zero. The culture shifts from protecting the company to protecting the people who make the company work. And in the main lobby of Skyward headquarters, in a place of honor where everyone who enters can see it, hangs a photograph of Charles Bennett in his baggage handler uniform, with a plaque that reads, Charles Bennett, 1952-2010, Integrity over Convenience. In his honor, we fly better. Marissa Bennett didn't just buy an airline. She transformed it. She took an institution built on silence and discrimination and rebuilt it on the principles her father tried to uphold. Integrity, safety, dignity for all. Because dignity delayed is not dignity denied. Sometimes it just takes the right person at the right moment with the right power to make things right. And sometimes the daughter of a baggage handler becomes the owner of the airline that destroyed him. Not for revenge, but for redemption. What would you do if you had the power to change a system that wronged you? Would you burn it down or build it better? Drop your answer in the comments below, and if this story moved you, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started with stories of justice, transformation, and people who refuse to accept that things can't change. This is just the beginning.